a big announcement, a shocker. A lot of people not expecting to hear that Chester Bennington has been replaced. Welcome to Get to the Hook. I am your co-host, Charles Latibeaudiere.
And I'm your co-host, Eric Colley. Welcome back, Charles.
Thank you very much. It was nice to get away for a bit. But listen, before we get to the hook, I really have to say a very heartfelt and warm thank you to Derek for sitting in, because I have so much respect and admiration. Who am I kidding? No, I'm not going to say
You were mad because you missed the Phil Collins episode.
I'm very mad. I actually said to Eric before I left, I was like, I can't believe we talked about this Phil Collins thing. It's the one I wanted to be here for. And
well, we
Derek
can mention him a little bit today. Not too much because we already did.
He does, yeah, he does.
He fits into this topic today.
It's into what we were talking about, which is established bands, changing lead singers. A risky thing to do sometimes, and sometimes they don't have a choice.
Yeah, sometimes it's a tragedy. Like the example we that brought this up.
Exactly, and that would be what happened just this past week here in LA. A big announcement, a shocker. A lot of people not expecting to hear that Chester Bennington has been replaced.
They're trying to say not replaced.
It's not replaced, and he can't be replaced. Right. But yes, Linkin Park had a showcase here in LA, and they revealed their new singer, who is now a woman.
Yeah, her name is Emily Armstrong. She was in a group called Dead Sarah, and she's got Chester Bennington's screamy, angry voice. She's also got a very melodic voice, so she can play the old Linkin Park songs. They can still play those live, but they have this new music, and her voice fits in with it. This is their new song. It's called The Emptiness Machine.
Let you cut me open just to watch me bleed. Gave up who I am for who you wanted me to be.
Sounds like Linkin Park.
Yeah, that's, she fits the mold.
Yeah, but also what I was so surprised about is not that they just announced, we have this new singer, which I think people thought was going to happen. They're like, oh, also, we have a new song out, we have a new video, we have a new album coming out in November called From Zero, and also we have 5 tour dates around the world.
As soon as they announced all that, I was like, how did none of this get out?
I don't know.
Because that's a lot of planning that's going on in a business where people talk.
I was trying to find, I was like, had they announced her being the singer, or had that leaked earlier and I just missed it? But no.
Yeah.
They kept all this under wraps, and they know they still have an audience. They released a greatest hits compilation called Paper Cuts earlier this year that actually had a new song on it called Lost. It was a new song, but it was an unreleased track. Chester Bennington's on that track. That song debuted in the top 40 for a week. The album was top 10. The audience is still there. The audience wants to see Linkin Park again. And the band wants to play. It's been 7 years since Chester died. I think that's respectful. They gave that
definitely
time.
Respectful. And like, you pointed this out last week when we were talking about this, that all the members of that band were in their prime when that tragedy happened, and obviously they loved Chester and would have preferred to go on with him, but they have careers that they had music they wanted to write.
It's sort of like if a spouse dies and you're younger, you can eventually remarry.
Right.
And if you have kids, they might resent it a bit, but do you have to be alone the rest of your life? Does your life have to end? And I don't think Chester would have been mad, because he actually was the replacement singer for another band. Do you remember back in 2013, he became the lead singer for Stone Temple Pilots?
That's right.
But this was before Scott Weiland died. Weiland, that band, they split up multiple times. So this is one of the times Weiland was out of the group. The last time.
That's right.
Chester was the lead singer of Stone Temple Pilots from 2013 to 2015. And when he left, it wasn't, acrimonious. He just went back to Linkin Park. Right. And they got another singer. Weiland himself remember Velvet Revolver, the group he was in the 2000s? Yep. That was him with the members of Guns N' Roses.
Guns N' Roses, yeah.
Because Axl Rose was taking 20 years to make Chinese Democracy his album. So Chester would have understood, I think.
Yeah, that bands do this sometimes. They just interchange people. And, fans, I think you're right in the case, because they waited 7 years, and clearly there is still an appetite for their fans. There have been some other cases, though, where the fans are just not happy with these changes. So
I want to do one of the most famous ones, but there's a little fun fact here. I don't know if you know this. One of the most famous bands changing singers in history was Van Halen. When David Lee Roth left, Sammy Hagar came in. They were still the same band mostly, But Sammy Hagar's a very different person, different
Uh-huh.
artist than David Lee Roth. The songs were
And their
less
music was
sexual.
different.
They were less party. Sammy Hagar's, I mean, he can do a party song, but
Sure.
he's not that guy like David Lee Roth. But do you know that Sammy Hagar was not the first choice to replace David Lee Roth? Eddie Van Halen
I
offered the
did
gig
not know that.
multiple times to somebody else first. And this person turned him down every single
See,
time.
this is the fun part of the show because I'll admit, I love both Van Halens. I know Van Halen fans don't want to hear that. You have to choose one.
Yeah, Van Halen or Van Hagar.
Right.
And then there was the Gary Sharon Van Halen in the 90s, but we don't talk
I'm
about
out
that.
on. I'm out on that. But and yet I come to this show and Eric will always open my eyes to a new fact. So who is this person? Drum roll.
I'm going to play you a little sample of a song because you know a song by this person, and this will blow your mind, so get ready for this. So I'm not even going to tell you what it is. Let's just play this song. You'll know the song. This person was offered the lead singer role in Van Halen.
Oh my. What? Oh,
Patty Smythe of the band Scandal. Scandal was like, The Warrior became their biggest hit in '84, but then they were kind of breaking up and she was going solo. And then she eventually had a big hit in the '90s with Sometimes Love Just Ain't Enough. Eddie Van Halen was a big fan of Patty Smythe. I've heard rumors that they actually maybe had like a little affair going, but I don't know. But he offered Patty the lead singer position in Van Halen. She was pregnant at the time and she goes, "This is not the right time for me. You guys party and I'm not a partier. You're in LA, I'm a New York person. I want to do my own thing."
I mean, vocally, I like it. It's almost like,
I mean, she's a belter. She could do those
like
songs.
Eddie was doing kind of long before Linkin Park even existed.
Getting a woman to be in the
was
band.
like, you know what? Here's how we really get them to stop thinking about David Lee Roth, just making a woman singing.
There would have been so much hatred in the
changed.
80s for a woman singing for Van Halen.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I mean, it's not as much now because it's 2024 with Linkin Park. Also, I think Linkin Park fans are a lot different than 80s Van Halen fans. David Lee Roth,
considerably.
Van Halen fans.
Yes.
But yeah, Patty Smythe. And she says now she kind of regrets, not so much, I think, she has her reasons for why she said no several times. But what would it have sounded like?
Wow.
Because you still have the other 3/4 of the band are the same.
Yeah, and I think it would have sounded great. I just think some of the songs in their catalog would have been hard to do from a woman's perspective.
Well, yeah, there's a lot they wouldn't have performed. But to be fair, Sammy Hagar didn't perform a lot of David Lee Roth songs.
Yeah,
like
that's true.
Sammy Hagar wasn't going to sing "Everybody Wants Some."
Right,
They didn't
and there
do
would have
that.
been a whole different slate of Van Hagar songs that would have been a Van Smythe.
Van Smythe,
Van Smythe,
Van Scandal, Vandal. I don't know what you'd call it, but I just
could have
imagine
been?
a world where that would have happened.
Wow.
But-
All right. Well, we're just gonna have to imagine.
Yeah, but that was an obvious one. But a lot of these, like Linkin Park, they do come out of tragedies. They don't replace the singer out of choice. It's necessity because the singer dies for various reasons. Leonard Skinner, after the plane crash that killed Ronnie Van Zant, the lead singer, and a good chunk of the band, they disbanded for 10 years. They didn't come back until 87 with Johnny Van Zant, who's Ronnie's brother. That was long after the fact. One band that recovered fairly quickly, looking this up, I didn't realize just how fast it happened. ACDC. Through the 70s. Bon Scott was the lead singer, great voice. They did, Highway to Hell and TNT and a whole lot of Rosie and all these songs.
Great songs. A lot like Van Halen, where the first group that they had, the first singer, had amazing songs, and yet they bring in a new singer and still have amazing songs.
I think this is like Van Halen, where you just it was more famous about Van Halen, but they just got bigger because Bon Scott, the lead singer, died drank himself to death basically in February of 1980. He died February 19th. March 29th of 1980. 5 weeks later, Brian Johnson was officially offered the position as lead singer.
It was that quick, huh?
Yeah.
I remember that it was quick, and yes, I was alive and conscious of the fact that Bon Scott had died.
Right.
But God, I didn't remember it as being that quickly that
fast.
Brian Johnson came on.
And it seems kind of wild to me. And they didn't have issues with Bon Scott. It wasn't like they hated him or whatever. Right. What actually happened after he died, they thought about quitting. They're like, well, we're done. And Bon Scott's family told him he would not want you to quit because the band was his life and his baby and his legacy. Why let that end? So they went looking for a new singer. They found Brian Johnson. And their first song with him, I mean, it's an all-time classic. This is Back in Black.
That is one hell of an album. The whole album to be
and
your
it's
first
one of
album.
the best-selling albums in history, both in the U.S. and worldwide.
Yeah.
Like tens and tens of millions of copies gone. And the album cover was all black, remember, and back in
Right.
black as a tribute to Bon Scott. Yeah, that album came out in 1980, the same year he died.
Wow.
So they moved quickly,
Yeah. They
but it
really
worked out
did.
for them.
Bon Scott's family, I think, would be
Yeah.
very happy.
And it also
because
does
the
help
band
keep
lived on.
Bon Scott's name alive.
Yeah.
Because ACD is such a household name, and you still know, oh, yeah, well, the original singer.
Right.
Had they ended in 1980, they might be more forgotten.
Yeah, because they went on to become this huge live act,
Right.
packing stadiums for decades more. So
Still can if they want
worked
to.
out. Yeah, they still can.
They can sell tickets anytime they want to. Another one that died, and they went about this in a very different way, replacing the lead singer, INXS, another Australian band, oddly.
That's right.
When Michael Hutchence died in 1997, the band had some like non-permanent fill-in singers for a few shows. Terrence Trent D'Arby sang with them
I
for
saw-
some shows. But, so he died in 97. They didn't find a permanent replacement until 2005, kind of like
When
Linkin
they
Park.
Did something that had never been done before.
They did a reality show
Yeah.
to find a new lead singer. It was called Rockstar INXS in 2005.
Brought to you by Mark Burnett, I believe, right?
I
think it was a
think
Mark
so.
Burnett show.
Sounds
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah.
And it was in INXS by 2005 hadn't had a hit in a while. I mean, they hadn't released music since 97.
Right.
But the rest of the band, who also wrote all the songs, the keyboard player, he's like, I'm the one who makes these. I'm
Right.
still alive. They wanted to make new music. They wanted to tour again. They have this reality show, and they find this guy, J.D. Fortune. And they were like, we're not looking for somebody to replace
It's a great
Michael.
name, right?
I
For-
know. Like we don't need someone to replace Michael Hutchence. But then listen to his voice, and you're like, yes, you did. But they got a hit. The first song, because the show did well, they released a song called "Pretty Vegas" in 2005. Made the top 40, the
Yep.
first one in a decade. This was "Pretty Vegas," and listen to his voice.
If you think you need it, here's the place to beat it, but it ain't pretty.
If that song came out today, we'd say that was AI and it's not actually J.D.
Right.
Fortune. You're like, oh, come on. You
AI Michael Hutchence, come
Right,
on,
right.
come on. And he stayed with the band off and on through till 2011, and then left, and then they ended in 2012. INXS announced they were like
Yeah.
breaking up.
I was thinking about INXS is an era that I think they get forgotten. And people
Unfortunately,
don't-
I love INXS.
Yeah, I love
I think
them
Kick
also,
is a
and I
perfect pop rock
think
record.
people forget how big they were, and to people of a younger generation, if you just go on to YouTube and look up an INXS live performance, you will see you have everything that Taylor Swift has done at Wembley. They were doing at Wembley way back then.
You're comparing INXS to Taylor Swift now?
No, I'm not comparing.
never that
I'm not comparing
big,
their
but-
career. I'm talking
Yeah.
about as a live performance
They were incredible
and
live.
how
and their audience
popular
loved
they
them.
were on the road.
Right.
It
And
was
just
really
had a string of untouchable hits.
Yeah.
I mean, Never Tear Us Apart and Need You Tonight and What You Need. And
That's what's so sad for these bands. I mean, there's the one part of it is just the loss of a friend, of a loved one, but then what it does to their careers and what
right.
the trajectory they're on, and then what ends up happening is really sad.
Yeah, and like I said, when you're the other person in the group who writes a lot of the music, like Mike Shinoda and Linkin Park, when you're kind of the leader
Yeah.
of the band, you're like, well, I didn't die. Like, why should I have to stop?
Right.
And it's not because you don't care about the person.
Right. You
But
have
you grieve and
talent
life goes on.
inside, yeah.
And you're still very talented. What do you do?
Yeah.
I loved Rockstar INXS, the name of that show. I don't know this officially, but I would imagine it had to be inspired. Remember the movie Rockstar with Mark Wahlberg in 2001? It was
Oh,
it was
yes, that's
based on
right.
the true story of this guy named Tim Ripper Owens, who was the singer in a Judas Priest tribute band. And somehow Rob Halford, the lead singer of Judas Priest, he left the group for a while. The band saw him in this tribute band and called him like, "Do you want to sing for the real thing?" And he did. He was like the karaoke tribute guy who got to be the guy.
Which then years later would be the exact story, the real story behind Journey
Yeah.
continuing. Huh.
Yeah, because Arnell
Yeah,
Pineda.
I wonder if
who
it was.
replaced-
I didn't connect those
I
two
don't know.
things when the TV show came out. By the way, they did a second season of that show,
They
right?
did, but it was with like a super group with Tommy Lee and some other people,
Right.
and it didn't quite because it
Yeah.
wasn't like a real already established band.
Right.
But Arnell Pineda from Journey, which also even that Steve Perry was not the original vocalist of Journey.
Correct.
Greg Raleigh was the singer for the first couple albums, and then Steve Perry became the singer,
Yeah.
and then history got made that way. Another band that wasn't that popular before they changed singers, but were on the verge, which is a weird time to don't change horses in the middle of a stream.
Right.
Did you see Guardians of the Galaxy 3 last year?
I have not seen.
Music is a big part of those movies.
Yes, right.
There's a scene in the movie where they use the song "We Care a Lot" by Faith No More. You remember Faith No More?
Yes. Okay.
So this was on their first album. The original singer was a guy named Charles Mosley, and this is "We Care a Lot." So it had that rap rocky kind of sound. Charles Mosley had a great voice for that. And then things got really contentious between him and the band as they just got a major label deal. They're opening for big acts. They're going on tour. They're becoming what Faith No More would become. But then there's just issues. Physical altercations happened. He wanted to do an acoustic guitar album, and they're like, we're like a rap folk rock band. Like, no. So
sorry, Charles.
The funny thing is,
Charlie.
They didn't technically fire him. I love how this played out. One of the guitar players was like, you know what? I quit. I can't deal with your personality. I can't deal with your creative ideas. I'm done. Well, one of the other guys in the band goes, well, if you're quitting, I want to go with you. And then all the rest of the band quit and reformed without him.
Without him.
Yeah.
They take the name. There's no legal battle over the name, I guess, because they were
there
probably
was
still signed.
Eventually, decades later. But
did they stay with the same label?
I believe so, because I think they had just signed to Major. But then they get this new singer in, Mike Patton, and that worked out because then they got this top 10 hit in 1990. This is epic. I love that song.
That's the voice that you know.
So real quick, Mike Patton never gets enough credit, I think, as a vocalist, because a lot of people probably only know that song, and it's sort of rap rock, and he's got that nasal thing and this screamy metal thing. He has a 6-octave range, Mike Patton.
Really?
For comparison, Mariah Carey only has a 5.
Ooh.
And when you listen to like other Faith No More songs, like do you remember when they'd covered the Commodore's "Easy"?
Yes.
And I'm like, wait, this is the epic guy?
Yeah.
He's singing smooth R&B.
Yeah, I thought the same thing when I heard that. I was like, do they have a second vocalist?
No.
Because the range is completely
And he can go
different.
super low and super high. Yeah, 6-octave range. It's
damn
almost
impressive.
superhuman. Yeah, that is
it's damn impressive.
Bizarre.
Huh.
Yeah, another band that changed in the midst of their popularity. And honestly, as a kid, I did not even know they changed singers. Everybody knows "Eye of the Tiger" by Survivor.
This one always puzzled me because the guy, again, I don't know that they were going for a sound-alike. They sound so close.
So much. So Dave Bickler was the guy who sang "Eye of the Tiger," and this is also a little messed up. Right after that song hit, he got nodes on his vocal cords, which happens to a lot of singers. And it wasn't a big deal, but they're like, you needed like 2 years rest to get your voice and let it heal.
Like,
the rest of the band is like, we can't wait. And they fired him.
I mean, the band was like, we got to strike.
Well, yeah, that was the
moment. We know
that
we're hot, you know what, right now.
Yeah, and we don't want to be just the Eye of the Tiger guys. And that is obviously what they're most remembered for now. But they had a lot of hits.
They had a string of hits after that.
They had a guy named Jimmy Jamison came in, and then they had The Search Is Over, High on You, Burning Heart from Rocky IV. They went back to Rocky. Weird thing, I was getting into Survivor's history. Eventually, Dave Bickler came back, and then Jimmy Jamison started touring as Jimmy Jamison Survivor.
Oh, gosh.
Of course, then there's the lawsuits over who owns the name, because Jimmy sang more hits than Dave Bickler did.
And probably wrote most of those, or co-wrote
them. Dave Bickler was Eye of the Tiger, which was the biggest hit.
Right.
So
Bickler's the one that everyone's coming to see, but they also want Jimmy's songs.
It got messy with some of these bands, lawsuits and stuff. One got really messy famously in the 90s, but you forgot about this. Motley Crue. Vince Neil was not always the lead singer.
You said this to me, and I was like, must have been just a blip.
Right after Dr. Feelgood became their giant commercial breakthrough blow-up record, and then they did a greatest hits album, did a bunch of tours, and then it just fell apart. They just turned on each other. They said Vince Neil, his daughter died, sadly, and he had I think it was a jet ski accident where he hit a rock. And Tommy Lee and Nikki Sixx were told about this in an interview, and they go, "Is the rock okay?" It was really, really nasty.
That sounds
they were horrible.
Right
I think when Vince Neil's daughter died, things started to soften a bit.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, also this was a precarious time for Motley Crue because by 91, 92, grunge and alt rock have hit. Their kind of metal was on its way
glam
out.
metal thing.
But they were big enough they could have survived it. So they're like, well, we got to do something. So there's a group called The Scream, had a lead singer named John Corabi. Nikki Sixx and Tommy Lee loved him, got him to be the singer of Motley Crue. They released a self-titled album in 1994, and they went for like a heavier sound. doesn't really sound like Motley Crue. This was the first single. It was called Hooligan's Holiday.
This is all. Oh, I've never heard this song before. Didn't know this era. Of
yeah, this
Motley
happened.
Crue.
It didn't really sound out of place by 94's
where
rock
they were
standards.
going.
But
Yeah.
what's funny is, I mean, the label was not happy because the album, it debuted at number 7. Like, it was okay, but definitely a big come down from
Right.
Dr. Feelgood. So they started working on another album, and Nikki Sixx was like, no, we like this guy because, one, he writes lyrics because Nikki Sixx had written everything. He wasn't used to having a singer who could also write. And he played guitar. So Mick Mars is like, oh, I don't have to do all the guitar.
Right.
I can try other stuff because he can just do the rhythm guitar. They liked working with John Corabi, but it wasn't working.
The label didn't.
The label did not like it. They were under a lot of pressure to get rid of him. And then eventually he quit because he's like, I can't deal with this. And the label's like, you need to get back with Vince Neil. And like, but we hate him. And he hates us.
But and the label's like, but we love money.
Yeah, and the band
We've
does too.
given you an advance, and
Yeah.
we need to make sure we can get our money back.
But like I said, I mean, sadly, Vince Neil's young daughter died. And I think that sort of, all the petty things you fight about suddenly don't seem that important.
Right. And they were
got
able
back
to get
together.
back together
Motley Crue, have stayed with Vince Neil.
up
now-
until their
second farewell
last
tour.
tour.
How many farewell tours? I saw
At
their
least
last
2.
show ever, but then it wasn't.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Can we just talk about that? I know this isn't the topic, but there's nothing more annoying than when you go to see the final live show. You're like, yes, I got the final. You saved the ticket back when you had tickets, and you're like,
Right.
yes. And then a year or 2 later, they go back on. That happened to me with who was it? Eric Clapton.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm never performing live again.
But at a point when they do a farewell tour, you got to go because some of these guys are hitting their 70s and 80s at this point. Like, one of these is going to be the farewell tour, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, I felt like maybe I missed it this time around with the Stones because I finally, for the first time in.
Well, they don't do farewell tours. I'll give
They
the
never
Stones
call
that.
it, exactly, which is cool. They never call it a farewell tour.
Yeah.
But by definition, one of them's going to be.
There's definitely been bands before. I forget who it was, but they were on their farewell tour, and I was like, should I go see it? And I was like, I'll just catch the next farewell tour. Because there's certain bands, there's certain acts, you're like, I know this is not it.
Yeah.
I know this is not it. But so we've talked about a lot of rock bands today, and it is mostly rock bands where you see this, but not exclusively.
Mm-hmm.
You see some art, but sometimes with like an R&B group, like the Temptations changed singers so much.
They changed singers.
The Impressions had a lot of singers, but when it's a group, you don't always notice right away, except for one big Motown group.
The
The
I know where
Supremes.
you're going. Yeah, that's talk about a change.
Yeah, our boss Harvey, not just that he loves the Supremes, he really loves the post-Diana Supremes.
Yeah.
He is
It's like,
maybe one person on earth.
right. It always feels personal to him. Like,
It really
it's like,
is.
what did Diana Ross ever do to you?
I don't know.
understand.
I don't know, but it's so weird, and you have to look at this in the moment of 1970 when Diana had just quit to go solo,
Mm-hmm.
and the Supremes went on without her. They got Jean Terrell, who was I think the sister of Tammy Terrell, who sang with
Yes.
Marvin Gaye. Obviously, we know that the Supremes were never as big again. Diana Ross was Diana Ross. But out of the gate, the Supremes were winning.
Really?
So the first single they released with Jean Terrell was this song, got to number 10 in 1970. It's called Up the Ladder to the Roof.
Don't be afraid. Up the ladder to the roof, where we can see heaven much better.
I mean, sounds like Diana Ross, kind of. They
little
weren't
bit.
trying to change the sound. But so that was a top 10 hit. Stoned Love was a top 10 hit. Diana Ross comes out, her first big solo single is Reach Out and Touch Somebody's Hand, which is a pretty well-known song now.
Right.
Only got to number 20.
That
It's like-
makes sense.
It's like, oh, maybe
That
the Supremes
song
don't
doesn't-
need Diana. No.
Yeah.
But then Diana's second single was Ain't No Mountain High Enough. And
And then
then she's Diana Ross. And
Right.
then the Supremes just quietly faded away, sadly.
Yeah, that is sad.
Yeah. But imagine like if Beyonce left Destiny's Child and they're like, well, we're just going to go on without you. Like,
What if they had? What
They
if
could have
they
tried.
had? They could have tried. There were certainly enough former members that they could have brought it back and reassembled. And
yeah, they could have got LaToya back or
hey,
whoever.
listen, New Edition went on after Bobby Brown.
It's true. And they both succeeded. And then they
Both
all
succeeded,
came back
they came
together.
back together,
Even
so-
bigger.
There,
So-
it can happen.
There can be happy stories to this. Since we didn't get to talk about Phil Collins with you, I won't do too much because we talked about it. But Peter Gabriel was the lead singer of Genesis. He left in 75. Phil took
Phil
over.
takes over.
That really worked out for everyone involved.
Yeah, that worked out.
Everyone.
Peter Gabriel had a good career.
But do you remember they replaced Phil? When Phil left in 96,
Yes.
Mike Rutherford and Tony Banks. Ray Wilson, I think was his name, was the singer they brought in. They released an album called Calling All Stations. Did not do well. And they were like,
right.
oh, we're just done. This is sometimes you gotta, like Kenny Rogers once said, you gotta know when to hold them and know when to fold them. And
By the way, they did do a farewell tour, which I did see, and
that was a farewell tour. There will be no more from that. But, yeah.
All right. Well,
Get your Linkin Park tickets if you can.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're touring, but they're not doing that many shows.
One show in LA, one show in New York, and then 3 other shows in like Hamburg, Germany, and Bogota, Colombia, and I forget the fifth. It's all over the world.
Yeah, they're spread it around the world.
But I'm sure the new album comes out in November. They're going to announce more dates.
Yeah.
There's no way they don't do a big tour for this.
Yeah. Once they start selling the tickets, that's when the promoters go.
That's where the money's going to be made. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. That's going to do it for us this week on Get to the Hook. We will see you next week.